Abby Tang asks, how did you become interested in drawing/creating artwork, and why? Unlike a few other people who say that they've just been drawing their whole lives, my interest in drawing really kind of came to being around the time I was in high school. I think it would have been around maybe my senior year. I have a lot of original characters in the background that I don't really share with a lot of people, but as I started talking with my friend Vaughn, and we exchanged ideas about our OCs more, I really got this compulsion where I wanted to be able to create them and kind of give shape to these characters that mean so much to me. The girl in the background, Kore, is actually one of these OCs. Nina asks, do you think that being asexual affects how you view and analyze content? I know my opinion as an ace person, but I want some more data on this. Yes and no. I'm of the belief that you can never fully separate yourself from whatever work you analyze. The way you think about things is impacted about, your life experience, who you are as a person. So, being asexual, I definitely think that affects the way that I see things, but I try to be more mindful of how it impacts the way I see stuff, so that I'm not compromising my own position as a critic and as a content creator. I think the best example I can give right now would probably be with Mew. I did not like Mew. I don't like how sexual she is. I really don't like all of the jokes that she shares, and she makes me extremely uncomfortable. Same with Toko. Same with the entirety of Ultra Despair Girls. There's a lot of stuff that I think me as a sex-repulsed asexual, I'm going to be put off by, and I think that's something that I can't ever fully separate myself from. But knowing that, I'm able to take a step back and recognize Mew's a perfectly fine character in her own right. Toko is a perfectly fine character within her own right. Ultra Despair Girls is a bad game, but the sex jokes aren't the main issue with it. I'm able to look at stuff like that and recognize my own biases towards it, and I'm able to offer explanations about why I receive things that way. I try not to use my own sexuality as a reason to say a game is good or a game is bad. If anything, why I like a game versus why I don't like a game. Another asexual question. Ipashi asks, as an asexual myself, I sometimes think our condition, I don't know which word to use to not make it seem like it's a problem, is overlooked by most people, being less flashy than other LGBTQ communities. So, after this premise, is it something only I think, or have you noticed it too? No, I completely agree with you. I think maybe condition is not the word I would use, but I get what you mean by that. The way that I see it is that asexuality and aromanticism, unlike a lot of other identities, gay people, bisexual people, transgender people, non-binary people, those other identities I feel in some capacity are easier to perform and more visual, I guess. A transgender person may take hormones to make their body conform more to what they feel. They might change their clothes, they might bind, they may undergo surgery. They visually change. And for people in same-sex couplings, there's also, you can refer to having a same-sex partner. You can get married to someone who's of the same sex as you. There's visible ways that you can sort of demonstrate your identity. Now, I'm obviously speaking from a more Western perspective where that stuff is more accepting, and it's obviously not true of all cases. But the way that I think of it is that asexuality is more about a lack of something rather than a presence of something. There's not really an easy way to show off that I'm asexual. I mean, I might wear a ring and a pin, but it's very easy to just overlook. Because this is one of my main theories here, is the way that our identity acts is we don't do something, we quote-unquote do nothing. The fact is that sex is so ingrained into our society. Like, think about, sex sells, save yourself until after marriage. Women's liberation is often connected with having sex with people, slut-shaming. Sex is so ingrained into our society that I think people just can't comprehend the reality that some people may just genuinely not want it. And so it almost just feels like it's not even an identity, it's just a choice, or it's something you'll get over, kind of like we're still prepubescent teenagers who still haven't discovered sex drive. So yeah, I would say that asexuality is more easy to overlook than others, because asexuality is just something that is so fundamentally against other parts of society that to not participate in one of the things that a lot of people consider as human nature, it almost seems impossible. I have a lot of feelings about asexuality and what that means. But yeah, I agree with you. It's sad that we have to scrounge around for representation. It's the way it is, and if nothing else, I'm still glad that, you know, we're living in a world where gay people, transgender people, and every other color of the rainbow, that they're getting attention as well. I just wish that we would also be included a little bit more in that. Chloe's In Time asks, what are your goals in life? And thank you for making such awesome content. Love your stuff. Thank you. On a more serious note, I suppose my goals are to get a cute apartment just to live in, find a job that I'm happy with and fulfills me creatively, while also gives me enough time to do the stuff that I love to do without burning me out. On a more lighthearted note, any asexual himbos, herbos, thembos out there who want to get married for tax benefit reasons, hit me up. I need someone to help me open pickle jars and help me start my car. Buzzy asks, if you had to die by an execution from any Danganronpa game, what one would you choose? I would probably have to go with Celeste's, largely because it's an instantaneous death. Of course, there's that anticipation of getting burned alive by fire, but getting hit by a truck seems like the most forgiving way to go out. Thimble asks, how are you? Also, what's your favorite set piece, arena, room from any of the Danganronpa games? Right now, when I'm recording the first take of this, I am quite exhausted. I have a large presentation that I need to work on that I'm putting off a little bit, but I think it's okay. I'm just tired, but I'm doing fine. And as far as my favorite set piece, I would probably say the setting of Chapter 3 in Danganronpa V3 in general. I just really love the aesthetic as a whole. Kyo's room is cool. Andy's room is also pretty much my dream. Kaio Hitsugi asks, if Ryoma and Fuyuhiko fight each other, who will win? I think they would be pretty evenly matched because, you know, Fuyuhiko is a Yakuza member and Ryoma is the ultimate prisoner. I think Fuyuhiko would win solely because Ryoma would let him win. But if they were both trying, definitely Ryoma. I think his fast movements would give him an advantage over Fuyuhiko. Lemon the Guppy asks, who do you headcanon as on the ace spectrum? To be honest, I kind of see everybody as being somewhere on the ace spectrum, but that's kind of just the way I perceive characters in general. But to get specific about who I actually label as being on the ace spectrum, Kyoko, Byakuya, Hiro, Hifumi, Aoi, Sonya, Gundam, Chiaki, Ryantaro, Himiko, and Kaito. Storm Red asks, if you could make anyone play Danganronpa, who would you pick? Jello Apocalypse. I think he would hate it, and I think it would be the funniest experience to see him suffer. Samugi Shirogane asks, as a Toko lover, I have a question. What made you dislike her? I would really like to hear why, as I don't know anyone who dislikes Toko that has played/seen Danganronpa. A lot of the reasons I dislike Toko are basically come down to personal taste, and I'm not saying that she's a bad character. But to give you my list of reasons, one is that she slut-shames a lot of the characters in Trigger Happy Havoc and in Ultra Despair Girls. That's one of my biggest pet peeves with pretty much any character. I know that I'm asexual and I don't really like to see women sexualized, but I also don't like slut-shaming them, just because I just think it's a very ugly trait. The second reason is that she talks down on fanfiction, and yeah, that is petty, I know, but as someone who kind of got into YouTube writing fanfiction when she was like 14, and someone who actually thinks there's a lot of value to fanfics and it's one of the most genuine expressions of creativity, I personally don't feel like any writer worth their salt would talk down anybody who expresses their love for something through writing, even if it is technically lower class. or something like that. The third reason is that she's self-deprecating. You might have caught on that I kind of like to quote-unquote bully a lot of characters. I like to tease people as a form of affection, and it doesn't quite hit right when I can't tease a character because she's just so down on herself. It's harder to engage with her. And then the fourth reason is that she's just abrasive. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I don't really like mean characters. So yeah, that's the reason why I don't like Toko. Totally understand why people do, she's just not for me. Noradora asks, which Danganronpa students' designs do you like the best, or least? I'll give you my favorite and my least favorite from each game. In Trigger Happy Havoc, Celeste is my favorite. She's a gothic queen, how can you not love her? My least favorite design from that game is probably Sayaka. There's nothing actually wrong with it, but compared to the rest of the class, she's very plain and she doesn't really stand out to me. In Goodbye Despair, I'd say my favorite is Gundam Tanaka. Just look at him. He's so extra. He's fantastic. My least favorite is Akane because it frankly feels like the game designers just gave up on her and just decided that her outfit was going to be boobs. Plus, it also feels too much like Aoi's design. And Aoi's had enough personality. You know, she had that little knee brace, she had shorts, she actually looked like an ultimate swimmer. Akane just kind of looks like someone who climbed out of bed and threw whatever she had on. Which, even if that fits with her character, doesn't make her very aesthetically pleasing. It's a shame too, because Akane's beautiful. I have to give a special shout out to Soda, just because I think his design is so ugly and it wraps around to being completely amazing. And then for V3, I think my favorite might be Tenko, just because I think she's the most unique out of all of them. You know, the crop top, she also has that cute green bow of hers, her little necklace and her hair. I think Tenko's super cute. My least favorite, probably Shuichi. He's just so boring to look at. He's fine as a character. I like him as a character, but design-wise, kind of lame. He should have kept his hat throughout the game. I don't care if it means his ahoge would have been hidden. He needed to have a hat. Chillbat asks, how would you rank all the Danganronpa games, either including or excluding Ultra Despair Girls, from worst to best? Hope you're having a good day. Yeah, I think I'm having a good day, even if I am tired. Ultra Despair Girls is the worst. Trigger Happy Havoc, Goodbye Despair. I honestly think Trigger Happy Havoc is better story-wise, worse in game mechanics, but the main reason why I rank it lower than Goodbye Despair is largely because of Chapter 2 and how upset it makes me. And we're going to leave it at that before we get the discourse started. That's a Bummer Dude asks, if there was a new Danganronpa installment, what ultimate talents would you like to see? Here are 5 that I could come up with, and I'm trying to not tap into any others that I've seen circulating through Fangames. So, Ultimate Puppeteer, so someone who's good at making puppets and puppeting them around. Ultimate Storyteller, there's a lot of different ways that you can portray that. It's personally something that I would like to design as well. Ultimate Hunter, because that seems like a very prime candidate for a blackened suspect. I think an ultimate therapist could probably do some damage and maybe do some weird mind games to get someone to commit a murder. This last one sounds a bit like a joke, but I'm serious. Ultimate barista? I just think that's stupid enough that it would work well in a Danganronpa game. A couple of people asked if I think there should be a new Danganronpa game, and if I'm satisfied with how the series ended. A while ago I probably said I wasn't satisfied, but I think I'm more okay with it now because I've kind of sectioned off V3 from the rest of the continuity, so that makes me more satisfied with it. I don't think there should be a new Danganronpa game, mostly because it kind of undermines the meaning of V3, and I think that would retroactively make it worse. Sin58 asked me a few different questions, so I'll just go in order. One is, which Danganronpa YouTubers do you most want to collab with? I'm pretty happy working by myself, and I don't really want to feel like a burden on anyone else. Second question is, which character most resonates with your current sense of gender? I would say Mahiru. this doesn't really come across in my videos since most of the time I'm cosplaying as a man, but I'm a pretty feminine woman, I think. But my hero kind of hits that femininity that I like, where she's not hyper feminine, but gently feminine, and I could easily see her as being someone who is just as comfortable wearing a skirt as wearing a pair of pants. She's just really cute. Third question is, which character stanbase do you find it hardest to relate to? Hajime, he's interesting, I guess, but he's just kind of plain. So I guess I don't really get those people that are like super into him. And their fourth question, bear with me here. What do you think about the seeming inverse relationship between character atypicality, i.e. darker skin, heavier weight, clearer neurodivergence, gender nonconformity, less classically appreciable forms of intelligence, and the weight they command during trials? I feel like Sakura is the only exception, for someone atypical actually carrying some weight in the trials and posing a threat to the mastermind, as it was largely through posthumous and flashbacks. That was a lot. So if I'm understanding this correctly, you're kind of asking me why the more atypical characters aren't given as much importance compared to the more conventionally attractive characters? This could be controversial, but I think it makes sense from a marketing standpoint. I think it's just the fact that most of the time people don't want to create characters who don't fit within society's norms and then give them a lot of importance, because there are people who will recoil away from that and say that, oh, you're just trying to be woke, or I can't relate to this character because of X, Y, and Z, because apparently it's very hard for a lot of cishet white men to relate to a woman. Yeah, I think it's interesting that Sakura is the only exception now that I think about it. I don't necessarily think I would call her gender nonconforming. She's just someone that, she's muscular, but Sakura's actually pretty feminine. Most of the clothes that she wears in the official merchandise and drawings of her is pretty feminine, which I really appreciate. So, yeah, it comes down to market numbers, all sorts of nonsense that... Anyways, let's go on to something easier. Cooked Maruchan asks, which of the 3 settings in the DR games did you like the most? I like the first game's academy. It's creepy and atmospheric. Yeah, I would agree. I've always liked Trigger Happy Havoc's atmosphere the most. I kept getting lost in the Ultimate Academy for Gifted Juveniles. I cut out a couple of large rants about how hard it is to navigate in there, especially if you're directionally challenged like I am. And I liked the island setting of the second game. It was fine, but I agree. The original Trigger Happy Havoc school, it was the peak of atmosphere. I really liked the fear of just being trapped inside one single building the whole way through. Ambrose Nightingale asks, which DR characters did you go from disliking to loving and vice versa, and what made your feelings change? They also asked, what is your least favorite popular trope, and how would you fix it if given the chance? So to answer that first question, I think the characters that I went from disliking to loving would probably be Hifumi and Himiko. Hifumi because, as I read more of his free time events, I actually started to find parts of his character that I could relate to. I think a lot of people do him dirty. There are some parts that definitely need to be called out for, but I've really come to appreciate Hifumi as someone who isn't just a nerd. He's also somebody that I see, if given enough time, he could actually be a pretty decent guy. Just, he has a lot of things to buff out around the edges. For Himiko, I originally didn't like her because the lip that she has, that's so petty, but it's true. And she was also so lethargic and really down on the dumps, and I didn't jive with that because of the same self-deprecating reasons as I mentioned with Toko. But as I got to chapter 3, that really changed my opinion of her because I actually got to see some more emotion out of her. And past that, she was really funny and cute, so I ended up really liking Himiko, and so I'm glad that somebody who went through a quote-unquote arc throughout the game actually got to survive, because the game doesn't do that enough with some of my other children. I'm okay, I'm fine. And vice versa, went from loving to disliking. Maybe the closest would be Junko. I think Tsumugi was a better mastermind than her, and I even think Monica was a more interesting mastermind than Junko. Because a criticism I've heard of Junko a lot is that her motivations make no sense, they're nonsensical. And That's not something I agree with, because I think the whole idea is that she's just doing it for the sake of being evil and for causing despair, which I think is something that, you know, a lot more villains just need to be straight up evil. But I do think she became less of an effective mastermind once I got to see a taste of other masterminds who I thought were given a little bit more time to, you know, establish a personality. Okay, to answer the least favorite popular trope and how I would fix it if given the chance, I think my least favorite popular trope is when they take a female character and say that she's plain looking, nerdy, ugly, not conventionally attractive, she isn't beautiful, and yet she's probably no less pretty than everybody else on the cast. Like, it's a conventionally attractive woman, but they're trying to convince you that, oh, this girl is abnormal, she's a freak, she's plain, she's not supermodel levels of hot. That just really annoys me, and the same is applied for male characters and those who lie elsewhere. I want more diversity in how people are casted. I want some more visual difference, because there are a lot of actors out there who don't fit that mold of conventionally attractive, yet they're still beautiful, and even if they aren't quote-unquote beautiful, they're still talented, they're still worth of attention. I have so much issue with society's beauty standards. Let's move on. Ekota asks, which DR character do you think has the biggest missed potential, aside from Togami? Pour one out for my love. Hiyoko is the first one that comes to mind. I stand by my claim that she should have survived to the end of Danganronpa Goodbye Despair. End of story. You can watch my video on that if you want more information, because I will get mad again. Azo asks, what's your opinion on the idea of the ultimate survivor that Danganronpa V3 introduces, and how do you think Maki would act if she got to be the ultimate survivor like Shirogane planned? I thought the idea of the ultimate survivor was very interesting, but I think it probably is best served as something that lingers on in the background, and I'm not sure how Maki would act if she got to be the ultimate survivor. I think Maki would probably act cold and withdrawn as well. Maybe there would be some lingering trauma in the background where she realized that her loved ones got killed and she got to live. I don't know. I think Ultimate Survivor Maki is a very depressing concept, but one that I bet there's a lot of good fanfic about. A few people asked, will you play other Danganronpa fan games, and which ones are you interested in? So Danganronpa Another and Danganronpa Another 2, those two are on the top of my list. I'm following the development of Project Eden's Garden. I know that there's Danganronpa Shattered Hope. I think it's Danganronpa F. Yeah, those are about the ones that I'm familiar with. I think I'll probably play them. I'm kind of stepping away from Danganronpa mostly because I want to give myself a reset and a chance to rebuild my energy again. Yokuro Simp asks, if you were to create your own killing game using the cast out of everyone from the games, who would you pick? And which characters relate to yourself the most? So I'm gonna answer that first one very quickly. Sayaka, Mondo, Chihiro, Taka, Leon, the Imposter, Mahiru, Peko, Ryoma, Kaede, Rantaro, Hiyoko, Mukuro, and Kirumi. Lots of K names. I would say that I probably relate to Taka the most because he's very loud, very dedicated to his schoolwork, sometimes to the detriment of his own mental health and his own well-being. Kind of is a little bit emotional and takes things a little bit too seriously sometimes and really just needs to be told to chill. The other two characters I relate to on a lesser degree, but I still think are worth mentioning, regrettably, are Hifumi and Korekiyo. Parts of Hifumi's concern with not having anyone to really talk about his passion with, and also wanting to be able to create something that other people can create fan art with, is something that I can really relate to. As well as the quoting a bunch of things from media that you enjoy in everyday conversations. That's definitely something I do. And Korekiyo, I definitely have that same obsession with anthropology, learning how different cultures work, why they work differently, the sort of mythos aspect to it, as well as occasionally apparently being unintentionally very creepy. Yeah, I'm kind of the weird one in my friend group, but I'm happy being that way. Quartz O's Rhinestone asks, As a fellow Kazuichi stan, what drew you to him? For me, it was how I saw myself in him and needing a lighthearted character to buoy me through tough times. So Kazuichi was the reason that I got into Danganronpa in the first place, and largely because of his design. I don't know what it is, but I love characters who have pink hair or red hair and have sharp teeth and are just kind of like the biggest boy you've ever seen. I just love those characters for no reason whatsoever. I just think they're so fun. And there are problems with Kazuichi, and I get why people get uncomfortable by him, and I respect that. But Kazuichi was just really special to me. I don't even know how to... He's just... I can't even really describe it. He just gives off such good boy energy. I love that for him. I don't get why people think he's hot. Granted, I don't get why a lot of people think a lot of characters are hot. But I just love him. He's so goofy. He's so dumb. I just love him. He's the boy of all time. Solomon M asks, are there any characters that you liked the concept of, but the execution/characterization for them made you like them less? Yeah. Teru and Mew. Teru could have worked because I think the haha funny pervert character trope is dumb and I think it's outdated. If he had just been like a huge Casanova that actually was like really successful at getting people to like fall for him, I think that would have been super funny. It didn't even have to be that he was successful, but like if he just respected women, I think I'd be okay with that. Just, I want to like Teru because I think his voice actor is fantastic, but can't all have nice things. And Mew is the other one just because, you know, I like the idea of her. I just don't like all the sex jokes. That's it. Dimitar Mihov asks 4 questions. 1 is, what do you plan to do after graduating college? I guess now that my internship is over, I could probably disclose a little bit more, but I worked for a podcast over the summer, and I really loved it. And I want to do it more in the future. I really discovered how much I love to edit audio, to go out, interview people, script, and record my voice. Good luck finding my voice out there, guys. What made you love some of the underrated characters in the series, like Mondo, Mahiru, Nekomaru, Himiko, etc.? I feel, unless your name is Nagito, Hajime, or any of the V3 cast, you don't really get that much fan theorizing and content about you. And I think that makes it much more interesting to think about it. I've always liked looking at the characters who get less attention than some of the bigger names, because I think that's where the most fun exists when it comes to theorizing and fan interpretation. There's more unexplored territory for you to trek through. But to focus on these 4 in particular, Mahiru is adorable, I think she's cute, and I don't think enough people give her credit for what kind of drama she was involved in high school. I think that's awesome. Plus, I think she does a good balance of like not taking any shit from boys while also not towing into controversial levels, as with Tenko. Himiko, I've already talked about why I like Himiko. She's just adorable. I liked her character growth. I think she's underrated. Nekomaru, he's a big beefy man, but he's also a genuinely sweet, caring guy who just wants the best for his team. He's someone that needs to be appreciated more. Mondo is probably... No, I'm gonna make this statement here. Mondo is the best black end in this whole series. He is the most tragic character in Trigger Happy Havoc. Don't just make butter jokes about him. You're making me cry. 3rd question is, what is your favorite genre in gaming, movies, and TV series? I like comedy and satire. I have more fun when I can laugh and joke at the things that I'm watching. I also think it's good when it's mixed in with a little bit of psychological horror. Just something that kind of just makes you stop and think and, you know, kind of make some lighthearted jokes about. And the last question is, which DR characters do you think should have survived longer? Taka should have survived longer. He was killed off too quickly. Same with Yoko, same with Ryoma. I feel like I've answered this question before, but it bears repeating. These 3 deserved better. They deserved to live longer than they did. Trazen the Infinite asks, how mindful were you at 999's ending? I hope that answers your question for you. Cat Frog Emoji asks, have you played Your Turn to Die yet? If so, what do you think about the game, the story, and its characters? Also love your videos and take as much time as you need for yourself. Thank you very much. And sadly, I have not played Your Turn to Die yet. I've heard about it enough that it's definitely something I need to check out eventually, but I haven't gotten around to doing it yet. Nikki asks, have you considered doing videos like these for any other games? I know that the Danganronpa Ace Attorney pipeline can be pretty thin, and you strike me as someone who would like those games. I personally really like Ace Attorney and wouldn't at all be disappointed with any other content within that realm. You know, I haven't played Ace Attorney before. The closest thing I've gotten to seeing that is Jello Apocalypse's Miles is a Robot series, and I'm open to the idea. I want to play Ace Attorney. It's on my wish list for the Steam store. Sometime in the future, maybe I'll have the time to talk about it. QG asks, I recently watched a very overlooked show called Riddle Story of Devil. Its Japanese name is Akuma no Riddle. I apologize if I mispronounced that. It's an action thriller slice of life Yuri anime about a class of female assassins assigned to kill a target, only for one of them to go rogue and protect her instead. It's only 12 episodes and has a fantastic OST, but I was disheartened to see that no one on YouTube has tried to analyze it, despite it having been around since 2013-2014. Would it ever be something you would consider checking it out in the future? Okay, I didn't hear about it before, but I already love the idea of this. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to investigate this later. I love girl bosses. I just want more female characters just being kick-ass and, I think the lesbians deserve more. Kiki QT asked a few questions, so let me go through them. How do you feel the media and/or fan content on franchises having an influence on the content? It depends on context and in moderation. If a popular fan interpretation or fan joke was able to be snuck into a franchise just as kind of like a gentle little nod to the fandom, I think that's perfectly fine, and I think that's cute. The example that comes to mind, I can't remember the exact one, is it was in one of the Fallout games where they referenced a really popular Monster Factory episode with the Final Pam and the Tin Can Baby and Rochi. I'll include a link to that if you guys have no clue what I'm talking about, but it's funny. They snuck in a little secret related to that somewhere in the game, and I thought that was cute. I thought that was fun. That doesn't matter so much to the story that it takes you out of the experience. But for things where it involves massive rewrites, massive plot differences, and basically trying to get a one-up on the audience, I don't like that. I think it's inauthentic, and I really don't like pandering to the audience. I feel like there needs to be some degree of separation between the fan base and the content creator, and that's something that's gotten much harder to do now that we're living in the year 2022, but that's just my own feelings. Second question is, have you ever heard of Ronpa and Friends? It's a fan-made version of DR, but with Mickey and the gang. My point in asking this is they do a lot of things you've mentioned in your vids to help improve some of the main issues in DR. I haven't heard of it before, but I'll have to check it out. Third question. I'm gonna come back to it because I have a lot to say about it. So fourth question, which is better, boba tea or slushies? I like boba tea. Slushies are fine, but boba tea is harder to come by where I am, and I kind of like the feeling of the little tapioca pearls. This is a little creepy, but I kind of like to think of it as being giant fish eggs, and that I'm gonna shut up now. But going to that third question I skipped over because I wanted to give it a lot of attention. Opinions on Undertale, the story and mystery of it, and the AUs. I was 15 when Undertale came out. It is probably the most influential game I've had in my life. Five Nights at Freddy's was the one that kind of got me into gaming culture as a whole. Undertale fundamentally changed the course of my life, honestly. FNAF was the one that kind of got me interested in video games in the first place, but Undertale was the one that really got me engaged with the fandom. That was the first game where I really got much exposure to the queer community. That's where I found out about non-binary people. That was the first time I got any real exposure to gender nonconformity and really even bisexuality and transgender people. And even beyond that, the kind of meta gaming surrounding it, as well as the morality that kind of blossomed and was discussed within it. And it ended up impacting the way that I think about games a lot and, what's the importance of representation. I don't think I would be as mindful as I am with the LGBT community if it hadn't really been for Undertale. The story itself I really like. I really love all the different interpretations that the fanbase has come up with. Undertale was such a magnificent thing to be a part of when it first got started, and you just got to see all these AUs and creativity blossom out of it. The music, the fan games, the comics, it's just... I really love Undertale. I love what it's done. And I'm not even gonna lie, in a very roundabout, indirect way, Undertale's also the main reason that I got into YouTube, into doing this channel. That's a story for another day, but it's that important to me. The AUs, though, there are a lot of good things about the AUs, but going off on a bit of a tangent here, there were a lot of AUs and some creators that really warped the way that I viewed relationships. Maybe I'll talk about this in the future in more detail, but I was exposed to a lot of things that really perverted the way that I looked at gay couples. There was, at some point, it almost encouraged me to fetishize them. And that's not something that I'm proud of. I was a kid during that time. The Undertale community was very foundational to me as a storyteller and as a content creator. But looking back, there are definitely some issues with it that I think left some marks on me that I'm still having to kind of work out of. That's a story for another day, though. Let's not get too down on the dumps here. Newbie Game Lover asks, have you played Undertale or Deltarune? If so, do you have a least favorite character from either of those games? I've watched a playthrough of Undertale several times, and parts of Deltarune. I haven't even listened to the second chapter yet of Deltarune, so I don't know why people are obsessing over Spamton, so I can't answer much for Deltarune. But I guess I don't really have a least favorite character from either of those games. I generally like all of them, I think. I think if I had to pick a quote-unquote least favorite from Undertale, it'd probably be Alphys. But again, I don't hate her. I really like her, actually. But if I can, shout my praises about my favorites, Papyrus is the best boy ever. I love him. He is so good. I love him. He's a sweet boy. Have I mentioned I love Papyrus yet? Ogorek asks, why do you like Zero Escape so much? Like, I'm genuinely curious, because I played all 3 games, and yeah, the story was amazing, but nothing really outstanding. The gameplay was just too awful. With all the boring and trivial escape rooms, and tons of useless explaining, I was just borderline napping in my chair sometimes. I just wish I liked it as much as you and others. 2 things. 1, it's totally fine if you don't like the series. I know that there's a lot of popular games out there that I would not like. And 2, I only have played up to 999, so I don't know about the other 2 games, so take what I say with a grain of salt involving those. But in my opinion, calling the escape rooms trivial and the explaining useless to a certain degree is kind of missing the point of 999. Now, if it's something that you personally don't like, that's not something I can change. But the point of 999 is you are escaping. If you took away the escape rooms, what are you left with? If you're wanting something more action-oriented, then yeah, I guess it could be kind of boring. But I kind of like the steady monotony of slowly working through rooms, picking up on the different clues and subtlety through people's dialogue. That's mainly the reason why I liked 999 so much. It wasn't intense. It was relaxing, honestly. I guess I just mostly like games where I can go around at my own pace and I don't have to worry about everything that's going on. And following that up, April asks, opinions on 999 or VLR if you've played either of them. So, haven't played Virtue's Last Reward yet. Have played 999. I do plan on playing Virtue's Last Reward soon, though. It's probably going to be the next thing I play after beating Trigger Happy Havoc. I really liked 999. I had gone in completely blind, not knowing anything about the characters, the story, the kind of way that any of the game functioned, and I had a blast. It was probably one of the most fun experiences I've had playing a game this year, and granted that's not saying much given that I played Ultra Despair Girls right after it. I really love this game. I think the way that the story is handled is brilliant and the foreshadowing is so good. I can't share it though because A, I said I would make a video about it in the future, and B, it's one of those games that I think you really need to play for yourself if you haven't. So yeah, that's my recommendation and my homework for all of you. Go play 999 right now.